For centuries, the ice has been more than just frozen water. It has been a vault, a silent guardian of secrets too old, too fragile, too terrifying to be exposed. Beneath the blinding white surface of Antarctica and Greenland, beneath glaciers that stretch endlessly into the horizon, lie objects, stories, and even lives that time itself tried to erase. Planes that vanished without a trace. Explorers who walked into the storm and were never seen again. Ancient fossils that should not exist. Viruses older than human memory. And entire machines entombed in frozen silence, as if the earth itself wanted them buried forever. But ice is never permanent. It is alive. It shifts, it cracks, it melts. And as our world warms, the ice begins to give back what it once claimed. Imagine the fear of standing on the edge of a melting glacier and realizing you are staring into a coffin of glass with a human face staring back at you from 70 years ago. Imagine the shock of scientists pulling up an object that doesn't belong to any known period of human history. Imagine the terror of reviving a microbe frozen long before civilization began, a microbe that could change everything. These are not stories from a novel. They are real. They have happened, and they are still happening. The ice, once thought to be untouchable, is releasing a frozen library of history, mystery, and danger. Some of it is breathtaking, some of it is tragic, and some of it could reshape the future of humankind. And the haunting question remains: why were these things buried under ice in the first place? Was it nature's accident? Or was it nature's warning? This is the story of what has been lost under ice for decades, and what is now clawing its way back into the light. From doomed World War aircraft, frozen mid-flight, to explorers whose last breath was trapped in crystal frost, to discoveries that hint at civilizations we barely understand, every secret that emerges reminds us that ice is not just frozen water. It is memory, and memory always returns. Before we dive into this chilling journey together, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Because what you're about to hear is not just history, it is a living mystery, and you want to miss the secrets still waiting to be uncovered beneath the ice. The world we see today is only the surface of Earth's long and silent memory. What lies beneath, hidden for decades under layers of ice, tells us a story more powerful than any history book. From the frozen peaks of Greenland to the untouched wilderness of Antarctica, the ice has preserved fragments of time, human stories, ancient creatures, forgotten machines, and mysteries that science is only beginning to unravel. This documentary will take you on a journey across frozen landscapes where explorers never returned, where planes disappeared as if swallowed whole, and where nature itself has locked away secrets that challenge everything we think we know. These discoveries are not just relics of the past. They are warnings, lessons, and revelations about the fragility of life and the unstoppable force of nature. In these next hours, we will walk through the haunting silence of glaciers, stand by the wreckage of lost expeditions, and witness the shocking truths revealed by melting ice. And as we do, one thing will become clear: the ice does not forget. The frozen world has always felt like another planet on our own Earth. When you stand before an endless wall of white, where the horizon disappears into mist and silence presses against your chest, it feels as if time itself has stopped. The ice does not move quickly like rivers or winds. It waits, it observes, it guards. Every snowfall that settles on top of the glaciers becomes part of a story, pressed down layer upon layer, century after century, until even human history becomes nothing but a fragile memory trapped in frozen walls. People often think of ice as dead, lifeless, and empty. But the truth is, ice is alive. It breathes with the slow rhythm of the earth. It grows. It shifts. It breaks. And in its deepest layers, it remembers everything. Unlike books that fade, paper that burns, or digital files that vanish with the click of a button, ice does not forget. It is nature's greatest time capsule, built without intention, but holding more history than any library on Earth. When snow falls and freezes, it traps air, dust, spores, and even whispers of human presence. Each layer is like a diary entry from the past. Scientists have drilled deep into ice sheets and pulled out cores, long cylinders of ice that contain air bubbles from hundreds of thousands of years ago. Imagine breathing air that was last touched by a mammoth walking across a frozen tundra. Imagine holding in your hand a piece of ice that was formed before the pyramids were even built. The glaciers keep these things safe, locked away in silence, waiting for someone to listen. There is a strange, haunting beauty in how the ice protects both the living and the dead. Animals that roamed during the Ice Age, once lost to time, are found with fur still soft, teeth still sharp, and even stomachs full of their last meal. Their bodies are not skeletons or fossils. They are memories frozen at the moment life was taken from them. The same is true for humans who entered these frozen landscapes and never returned. Their skin, their clothes, their letters, even their final expressions remain as if they only closed their eyes yesterday. Ice does not destroy. It holds. It preserves. It whispers, "I will keep you safe, but I will also keep you hidden." The silence of the frozen world is not emptiness. It is the weight of stories unspoken. When explorers and scientists travel across glaciers, they often describe a strange feeling, as if being watched by something ancient. The wind carries no sound except its own cry, and the ground beneath their feet feels more like glass than solid earth. It is not just coldness they feel. It is history pressing against them, invisible but undeniable. In those moments, the ice seems less like a natural element and more like a guardian. It is as if the planet itself chose to lock away certain truths where only the brave, or perhaps the desperate, would dare to look. But why does the ice hold on to these stories so much better than anything else? The answer is in its nature. In most parts of the world, when life ends, the body decays, bones crumble, and memories fade. Sunlight, heat, rain, and soil consume everything. But in the frozen world, life is paused. Decay is stopped. There is no warmth for bacteria to grow, no air for fires to burn, no moisture for plants to break things apart. Instead, there is stillness. A body left on the frozen ground does not return to the earth in the usual way. It becomes part of the glacier, part of the story written in white. Every object, a boot, a letter, a tool, or even a plane, becomes a relic in this natural museum, untouched for decades, centuries, sometimes millennia. When you look at a glacier, you are not just looking at ice. You are looking at a living archive. Deep inside, there are bubbles of ancient air that reveal what the world once was. There is dust that traveled across deserts, thousands of miles away, and settled in frozen silence. There are ashes of volcanic eruptions that darkened the sky before any human could write about them. There are traces of pollen that speak of forests long vanished, rivers long dry, and animals long extinct. All of it locked away, not by human hands, but by nature itself. Ice has become the historian of Earth, and yet the stories it holds are not always gentle. They are often tragic, carved by loss, desperation, and the final breaths of those who sought to conquer the cold. Imagine being one of those explorers, stepping onto the glacier with courage and hope, only to be swallowed by storms and endless white. The last thing you feel is not fire or noise, but silence. Then, for decades, perhaps centuries, your story remains untold, your body unseen, until one day the ice chooses to release you back into the world. What does that mean? Is the ice showing mercy, or is it reminding us that no matter how far we run, the past always returns? The frozen landscapes of our planet are filled with these invisible graves, these hidden vaults of history. To walk on them is to walk on a library that you cannot see but can always feel. Beneath your feet might be the remains of an ancient animal, or perhaps the wreckage of a machine, or maybe even the heartbeat of an explorer who once believed he could overcome nature. All of these things lie beneath the surface, locked away until the world is ready, or perhaps until the world is no longer safe. The emotional power of ice comes from this duality. It is both protector and prisoner. It keeps things safe, but also keeps them hidden. It preserves life, but also traps death. It gives us glimpses of the past, but never the whole truth. It allows us to touch history, but never to change it. Standing before a glacier is like standing before a mirror of time. You see your reflection on its surface, but you know that deep inside, countless others are watching back at you, silent, waiting, eternal. And this silence is not empty. It is heavy. It carries the weight of centuries, the voices of people and creatures who no longer walk the earth. The quietness of the frozen world is almost sacred, like a cathedral made not of stone but of ice. Every crack in the glacier, every groan as the ice shifts, sounds like a whisper from the past. Some who have stood there claim they could feel the presence of those who came before, as if the ice itself remembers not just their bodies, but their hopes, their fears, their final prayers. As we enter this story of what has been lost under ice for decades, we must remember that the frozen world is not empty space. It is memory. It is a prison that holds the past with hands of glass. And as the ice melts, these memories are returning to us, sometimes beautiful, sometimes horrifying, but always undeniable. The silence of the glaciers is not the silence of nothingness. It is the silence of everything, waiting to be heard. The story of explorers is not just about discovery. It is about human hearts that burned with dreams so bright they dared to challenge the deadliest corners of the earth. To them, the frozen wilderness was not a barrier. It was a calling. The white emptiness whispered promises of glory, of maps redrawn, of names carved into history. They marched into storms, into shadows, into the unknown, believing that their courage would be enough. But courage alone cannot melt ice. It cannot silence the wind that roars like a living beast across endless plains of snow. Many never returned. Their last breath froze in the air, their footsteps buried in blizzards, their stories hidden under the weight of centuries of silence. These are the lost explorers, men who gave everything to reach the edge of the world, only to vanish into the very ice they sought to conquer. One of the most haunting tales belongs to the Franklin expedition. In 1845, two ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, set sail from England, carrying more than 100 men. Their mission was daring, to chart and navigate the last, untraveled stretch of the Northwest Passage through the Canadian Arctic. They carried supplies for 3 years, confident in their technology, their seamanship, and their spirit. Families waved them off, believing they would return as heroes. But the Arctic had other plans. The ships became trapped in thick, unrelenting ice. Winters passed, and the men remained prisoners of a frozen labyrinth. Supplies dwindled. Hope withered. One by one, men fell to hunger, disease, and despair. Letters and journals, recovered long after, spoke of unimaginable suffering. Some survivors attempted to march across the ice, dragging heavy sledges under a sky that never softened. They never made it. Their frozen bodies were later found, still wearing their uniforms, faces stiff with anguish, as if the storm had frozen their fear in place. For years, the fate of the Franklin expedition was a mystery, whispered in courts and written in newspapers. Families waited for news that never came. Only fragments returned, relics, bones, buttons, scraps of clothing sealed in frost. To this day, the story chills the heart because it shows that even the bravest men, armed with the strongest ships, could be swallowed by silence. The Arctic does not bow to human ambition. It buries it. It freezes it. It reminds us that nature is the true master, and we are only guests on the edge of its kingdom. Decades later, on the other side of the world, another story unfolded. one equally heartbreaking, equally unforgettable. Captain Robert Falcon Scott dreamed of planting the British flag at the South Pole. In 1910, he set out with his team, determined to conquer Antarctica. They battled winds that cut like knives, temperatures that burned the skin with cold, and landscapes so empty they seemed endless. Every step forward was a war against exhaustion. Every night was a fight for survival. Yet Scott and his men pressed on, believing that glory awaited them at the pole. But when they finally arrived in January 1912, after months of unthinkable suffering, they were met not with triumph, but with crushing despair. A Norwegian team led by Roald Amundsen had beaten them by only weeks. The flag they dreamed of planting was already there. The South Pole was conquered, but not by them. Still, Scott did not give up. He and his team turned back, facing a return journey through storms worse than anything they had endured. Their bodies were broken. Supplies were gone. The ice stretched on without mercy. Scott wrote in his journal until the very end. His words remain one of the most haunting testaments to human spirit ever recorded. He wrote of his men's bravery, of the cold that gnawed at their souls, of the snow that buried them deeper each day. "We took risks, we knew we took them," he wrote, "and things have come out against us. We have no cause for complaint, but bow to the will of Providence." When their tent was finally found months later, the three men lay side by side, frozen together in death as they had been in life. The journal lay nearby, his handwriting still legible, his story preserved by the very ice that killed him. These stories strike deep because they are not just about loss. They are about love, love of discovery, love of country, love of purpose. The explorers were not foolish. They were dreamers, and dreams have always demanded sacrifice. They wanted to touch the edge of what was possible, to leave behind something larger than themselves. And though they never returned, they left behind something eternal. Their frozen remains, their journals, their ships locked in ice. All of these speak across time, reminding us of the price of human ambition. The silence of the ice holds their last moments with a cruel tenderness. Imagine the Franklin sailors huddling together in a wooden ship surrounded by frozen seas, their lanterns flickering weakly against walls of frost, their minds haunted by thoughts of home. Imagine Scott and his men lying in their tent, the wind howling outside like a beast, each breath shallow, each heartbeat slower than the last, yet still writing words of courage for a world they would never see again. These moments are not fiction. They happened. They are written in the snow, carved in ice, remembered by history. And even now, as glaciers shift and reveal what they once buried, fragments of these explorers return to us. A bone emerges. A boot appears. A scrap of cloth drifts free. Families and nations mourn once more, reminded that the frozen world does not forget. It only waits. Each discovery is both a gift and a wound, a chance to finally know, but also a reminder of the cost of knowing. The lost explorers teach us something profound. They show us that the human spirit is both fragile and unbreakable. Fragile because the cold can end life in minutes. Unbreakable because even in their last hours, they held on to hope, courage, and dignity. They died not as nameless figures swallowed by the snow, but as voices that continue to echo across centuries. Their sacrifices shaped the way we see the poles today. Their failures are not failures at all, but warnings and lessons, etched forever in frozen time. When we speak of them now, we do not just recall history, we recall humanity. We remember the faces of men who walked willingly into storms that no one could endure, who left behind comfort for the chance to touch eternity. The ice may have claimed their bodies, but it could not claim their dreams. And as long as those dreams are told, they are not lost. They are alive. They are here. They are part of us. During World War II, the skies became battlefields. Thousands of planes flew across oceans and continents, carrying young men into danger with courage burning in their hearts. Some never made it home. They were shot down, swallowed by storms, or simply vanished without a trace. Families waited for letters that never arrived. Mothers lit candles that burned until they melted into silence. And nations carried the weight of soldiers who disappeared into the unknown. While many of these planes fell into seas or forests, some were lost to the frozen world, where the ice swallowed them whole and kept them hidden for decades. The story of these vanishing planes is not only about war. It is about memory, about how ice holds secrets longer than any grave, and how one day those secrets return to remind us of the human lives that once fought for freedom. In July 1942, during one of the darkest years of the war, 6 American fighter planes and 2 large bombers were flying across the Atlantic. Their mission was part of Operation Bolero, a daring plan to move aircraft from the United States to Britain by hopping across bases in Greenland and Iceland. The skies over Greenland were wild, filled with storms that appeared like walls of white, winds that tossed metal like paper, and visibility so poor that pilots flew blind. The squadron of planes, already tired from long hours in the air, found themselves trapped in a massive blizzard. Fuel was running low. The ice stretched endlessly beneath them, a death trap waiting to claim anything that dared to fall. One by one, the pilots realized they could not continue. Their radios crackled with fear and determination as they decided to attempt emergency landings on the glacier below. Imagine the terror of looking down at nothing but endless white, knowing there was no runway, no safety, only the hope that the ice would not shatter beneath you. Against all odds, the crews managed to bring the planes down without losing a single life. They were stranded on the ice, freezing, starving, desperate, but alive. Rescue teams eventually reached them, pulling the men out after days of unimaginable suffering. The soldiers were saved, but their planes remained behind, swallowed by the glacier. For decades, those planes were forgotten. The war ended, peace returned, and the world moved on. But the ice did not forget. It pulled the planes deeper and deeper beneath the surface, burying them under more than 200 feet of snow and ice. They became frozen tombs, not of men, but of machines, resting in silence while the world above changed. Generations grew up never knowing that beneath their feet lay the ghosts of World War II, waiting for someone to remember them. 46 years later, in 1988, a small group of passionate explorers returned to Greenland with one goal: to find those lost planes. They had heard the stories, the legends of the squadron that vanished into the glacier, and they refused to believe the planes were gone forever. Armed with radar, drills, and stubborn hope, they searched the ice for weeks. At last, their machines detected something buried deep below. It was not rock. It was not natural. It was metal. The explorers began digging, cutting through layers of solid ice thicker than a cathedral wall. Day after day, they drilled, melted, and carved their way down, deeper than anyone imagined they would have to go. Finally, at 268 feet below the surface, they found her, one of the fighter planes, a P-38 Lightning, perfectly preserved in the cold embrace of the glacier. They named her Glacier Girl. Her silver body, though battered by time and pressure, was still recognizable. Her wings stretched like frozen arms, her cockpit sealed tight as if still waiting for the pilot to climb back in. To see her emerge from the ice was to see time itself fall. She was not just a machine. She was a story brought back to life, a reminder of young men who risked everything in skies filled with fire and fear. The team carefully dismantled her piece by piece, hauling her to the surface, and later restored her to flying condition. In 2002, 60 years after she first went down, Glacier Girl once again took to the skies. As her engines roared to life, as she lifted off the runway, it was as if history itself had awakened from a frozen dream. The sound of her flight was not just mechanical noise. It was the voice of memory returning, the echo of men who once sat in that cockpit, with hope burning in their chests. But Glacier Girl is only one of many. Across Greenland, Alaska, Siberia, and Antarctica, other plains remain locked in ice, hidden from view but never destroyed. Some carried soldiers. Some carried supplies. Some carried secrets. There are stories of planes filled with coded messages, experimental weapons, or classified technology that disappeared into storms and were never recovered. If the ice gives them back, what will we find? What truths from the war still wait, entombed in silence? The thought itself is haunting. Every time the glaciers melt a little more, we wonder what machines, what letters, what faces might return. The melting of the polar ice is now revealing more than just natural history. It is pulling fragments of war back into the present. A rusted wing emerges. A tail fin appears. Small pieces of machinery rise to the surface, like the fingers of ghosts pushing through the snow. Each discovery reminds us that history is not buried. It waits, and the ice, patient and cold, chooses when to release it. The military secrets hidden in those plains may not have the same power now, but they still carry weight. They are reminders of how close humanity came to destruction, how desperate nations became in their fight for survival, and how many lives were thrown into the frozen abyss of war. What makes these stories emotional is not the machines themselves, but the men connected to them. Each plane was not just metal and engines. It was a cradle of human hope, carrying boys barely out of their teenage years into skies they may never return from. Glacier Girl carried a pilot who risked everything, who looked death in the eye as his plane touched down on ice. When her body was pulled from the glacier, it was as if his courage had been remembered, as if his sacrifice had not been forgotten. For the families who once grieved without closure, these discoveries are not just history. They are healing. They are proof that even after decades of silence, memory can rise again. There is something almost spiritual about the way the ice holds on to these plains. It is as if the earth itself decided to keep them safe, to protect them from rust, fire, and decay until the time was right for them to return. The men who flew them are gone, but the machines remain, silent messengers of another era. When you stand beside one of these frozen relics, you cannot help but feel the weight of their story pressing against you. You can almost hear the roar of engines, the rush of wind, the desperate prayers whispered in cockpits as pilots flew through storms of snow and bullets. The vanishing planes of World War II are more than wreckage. They are voices calling from beneath the ice. They remind us that war is not just a matter of battles won or lost, but of lives interrupted, dreams cut short, and stories frozen in time. Each time a plane rises from the glacier, it is like a letter finally delivered after half a century of waiting. And the message is always the same. Remember us. Do not let us vanish again. The ice does not only hold machines, ships, or relics. Sometimes it holds people. Flesh, bone, clothes, even expressions, locked in crystal silence for decades, sometimes centuries. To look into the face of someone who died long ago and still see their skin, their hair, and the shape of their features is to feel the past not as history, but as presence. These are not skeletons turned to dust. They are men and women frozen at the moment of death, caught in the embrace of ice. And when the glaciers finally release them, the effect is like waking the dead. Soldiers have always walked into places from which they never return. In mountains, across seas, and especially into frozen wastelands, many vanished without leaving behind more than a name in a family's memory. Families wrote letters that were never answered. Mothers kept uniforms folded in closets. Fathers stared at photographs long after hope had faded. And children grew old, never knowing what happened to the parent who disappeared. For some, the final mystery was never solved. But sometimes the ice gives back what it claimed. A hiker stumbles upon a boot sticking out of the snow. A mountaineer discovers a body lying in silence, untouched by time. Scientists digging into glaciers suddenly find not bones, but a whole person staring back at them. These moments are so powerful that even the hardest hearts break, because it is not just discovery, it is recognition. Imagine standing on a mountain slope, the air thin and biting cold, when suddenly your eyes catch something in the ice. At first, it seems like a shadow or a stone. Then you realize it is a hand. The skin is pale, but still there. The fingernails are visible. The hand looks as though it belongs to someone asleep rather than gone. You brush away more snow and see a face. Eyes closed, lips pressed, hair still resting against the forehead. It is a soldier who fell long ago, but here he lies as if waiting to be awakened. To look into that face is to feel a chill deeper than cold, a reminder that death is not always dust. Sometimes it is memory that refuses to fade. One of the most powerful moments came in the Alps, where the bodies of World War I soldiers had been found as glaciers retreat. They were young men, barely out of their teenage years, who had been ordered to fight on icy mountaintops, where temperatures could kill faster than bullets. Battles were fought not only against the enemy, but against avalanches, frostbite, and hunger. When they died, the snow covered them gently, as if laying them down to rest. 100 years later, melting ice revealed their faces again. Their uniforms were still on their bodies. Their boots were still tied. Some even had letters in their pockets, written to mothers and sweethearts, words of love and fear, preserved as clearly as the day they were written. To hold such a letter is to hear a voice from another time, whispered directly into your ear. In those moments, the past feels unbearably close. Families who once grieved without knowing finally receive answers. For descendants who never met these soldiers, seeing their ancestors' belongings is like meeting them for the first time. The discovery is not only historical, it is deeply personal. A son who never had a father, a granddaughter who only knew stories, a family tree with missing branches suddenly feels whole again. The ice does not just give back a body, it gives back identity. It gives back connection. The impact on those who discover such remains is just as profound. Soldiers of today, sent to recover their frozen brothers from the past, often stand in silence as they lift the bodies from the snow. They feel as if they are touching not strangers, but comrades, bound together by shared sacrifice across generations. Archaeologists and scientists, usually trained to remain objective, often describe tears welling in their eyes when they uncover a face that looks as if it belongs to a man simply sleeping. One scientist once said, "You can feel their last breath still trapped in the air around them." That kind of presence is not data. It is humanity, raw and undeniable. There are stories of couples found together in the ice, locked in a final embrace. Two lovers who perished in a storm were discovered holding hands, their bodies pressed together, their love preserved beyond time. When their story was told, it moved millions around the world because it was no longer about war or conflict. It was about love refusing to let go, even in death. The ice, cold and merciless, had somehow kept safe the most fragile and precious thing, human connection. Even more haunting are the faces that still show emotion. Some have been found with eyes open, gazing into nothingness, as if their final moment had been captured like a photograph. Others wear expressions of pain, fear, or peace, silent testimony to the last second of their lives. Standing before such a discovery is like looking into a mirror of mortality. You are reminded that life is fleeting, that everything we are can be paused in an instant. It humbles us, it frightens us, and yet it connects us to those who came before in a way words never could. For families, the return of these frozen loved ones is bittersweet. The joy of finally knowing is often accompanied by the grief of loss returning fresh. To bury someone after 100 years is to mourn them twice, once in absence and once in presence. But there is comfort too. They are no longer lost. They are no longer wandering in memory alone. They are home. Funerals are held with honor. flags draped over coffins, prayers spoken for souls long silent. It is as if time folds in on itself, allowing the living and the dead to meet again. These discoveries also teach us about resilience. Despite decades or centuries of cold, despite storms and shifting glaciers, the human story endures. Clothes still hang on bodies. Belts, medals, photographs, even small trinkets remain. A pressed flower found in a soldier's diary, still delicate after decades, speaks louder than history books. It says, "I was loved. I was remembered." These small details transform anonymous remains into individuals with names, with families, with dreams. And in doing so, they remind us that war is never just numbers. It is people. People who laughed, who hoped, who feared, who longed for home. The soldiers frozen in ice also remind us of the cruelty of conflict. Many of them did not die in battle, but from the merciless environment itself. Blizzards smothered them. Avalanches buried them. Hunger hollowed them. These men were not defeated by enemies alone, but by the indifference of nature. The ice, though it preserves, does not protect. It is both coffin and guardian, holding their stories until the world is ready to remember. The emotional impact of seeing such discoveries cannot be overstated. For scientists, for soldiers, for families, and for strangers who read their stories, the effect is always the same: silence. A silence filled with awe, with grief, with respect. Standing before a frozen soldier is like standing at the edge of time itself. You feel that you are in the presence of someone who never meant to become history, someone who wanted only to live, to return home, to see loved ones again. That unfulfilled desire lingers in the air, making every discovery not just an archaeological event, but a human one. The ice connects the living and the dead in a way no graveyard ever could. It does not simply hold bones. It holds the breath, the warmth, the humanity of those it claimed. And when it finally gives them back, it offers us a chance to remember, to honor, to understand. Frozen soldiers are not just evidence of the past. They are proof that memory cannot be erased, that even when time tries to bury stories, nature has a way of keeping them safe until we are ready to listen. And so, when we speak of frozen soldiers and lost lives, we are not only speaking of death. We are speaking of the persistence of love, the resilience of memory, and the way ice, cold and merciless, can also be tender in its own strange way. It keeps safe what we cannot. It waits when we forget. And when it finally reveals its secrets, it gives us back not only the past, but ourselves. The earth is beginning to whisper secrets from a time when humans did not yet rule the world. As glaciers melt and permafrost thaws, creatures that walked the planet tens of thousands of years ago are returning to sight. Mammoths with long curved tusks, woolly rhinos with thick fur, even predators that once hunted across frozen plains. They emerge not as skeletons or shadows, but as whole bodies, with fur, skin, and sometimes even eyes that seem to look back at us. It is as though the Ice Age never ended, and these giants have simply been sleeping, waiting for the warmth of the present to bring them back. The first time scientists uncovered a woolly mammoth calf from the permafrost, it was like finding a ghost. Its body was so well preserved that the wrinkles of its skin, the folds of its trunk, and even its eyelashes were still intact. The calf looked like it had only just lain down to rest. Some of its stomach contents were still inside, frozen grass from a meadow that no longer exists. When researchers placed their hands on its thick fur, they could not believe it had been dead for thousands of years. The animal's presence was overwhelming. It was no longer a fossil or a story in a book. It was real. It was here. For scientists who dedicate their lives to studying life long gone, the emotional impact is indescribable. They do not just study bones anymore. They are face to face with a creature that once lived, breathed, and roamed freely. Many report a strange mix of wonder and sorrow. Wonder, because they are touching history itself. Sorrow, because they know the creature they hold in their hands is forever silent, forever gone from the living world. One scientist described looking into the eyes of a frozen wolf pup, preserved with its fur golden and soft, its teeth still sharp, as like looking at a sleeping child who will never wake. These discoveries blur the line between life and death, between past and present, in a way that shakes even the most logical minds. There have been woolly rhinos uncovered with their horns intact, fur still bristling with frost. Horses that ran across icy plains tens of thousands of years ago, lying as if they fell yesterday. Even cave lion cubs, their tiny paws curled, their whiskers frozen stiff, looking as if they could mew if only the ice would let them breathe again. Each discovery is like opening a time capsule, but instead of objects, what returns is life itself. It is not just archaeology. It is resurrection in appearance, if not in truth. The emotional response to these creatures is universal. People from around the world, when shown photographs, react with disbelief and awe. The idea that something extinct for thousands of years can still appear alive changes the way we think about time. Extinction feels final, yet here is proof that nature sometimes keeps its children safe, tucked beneath layers of frozen earth, waiting. Seeing the face of a mammoth calf makes us imagine the herds that once thundered across Siberia. Seeing that cave lion cub makes us imagine its mother hunting under shimmering northern lights. These visions connect us to a world that seems impossibly distant, yet suddenly close enough to touch. But these discoveries are not only emotional, they also carry questions that stir debate around the world. If we can find creatures so perfectly preserved, is it possible to bring them back? Scientists have already extracted DNA from mammoths, lions, and rhinos found in the ice. Some believe it is only a matter of time before cloning makes the return possible. Imagine a mammoth calf walking again across the tundra, guided by scientists, but alive in our time. Some dream of entire herds restored, reshaping ecosystems that disappeared long ago. They call it de-extinction, a chance to correct the loss of species erased by time and climate. Yet with this dream comes heavy ethical weight. Should we bring them back? The mammoth once belonged to a world that no longer exists. Its grasses, its predators, its weather, all gone or changed beyond recognition. To place it in today's fragile ecosystems might not be a gift, but a burden. Would it suffer, unable to adapt? Would we be creating life only to watch it struggle? And beyond that, do humans have the right to decide which species should return from the grave? Some argue it is a step too far, that playing with life and death crosses a boundary nature never intended us to cross. Scientists themselves are divided. Some are driven by excitement, by the idea of rewriting history and seeing extinct animals alive once more. Others warn of hubris, of repeating the mistakes that led to so much extinction in the first place. There is also fear. If permafrost can keep mammoths, rhinos, and wolves intact, what else might it preserve? Ancient bacteria? Viruses frozen for millennia? The same melting that reveals beauty may also reveal danger. To awaken creatures is one thing. To awaken diseases our bodies have never faced could be another story entirely. Still, the sight of these animals is enough to ignite imaginations everywhere. When a mammoth is displayed in a museum, its thick hair still falling across its frozen body, children press their hands to the glass in amazement. They do not see death. They see life paused, waiting to continue. The questions they ask are pure and powerful. Why did it die? Can it live again? What would it eat? Would it be our friend? In those innocent questions lies the heart of the debate. We want to reconnect with the life we have lost, because deep inside, we know we are losing too much too fast in our own time. Every frozen creature tells two stories at once. The first is the story of its own life, where it walked, what it ate, how it lived in a world of ice. The second is the story of loss, extinction, climate change, the fragility of existence. To hold the remains of a mammoth calf is to hold both wonder and warning. It reminds us that nothing lasts forever, that great and powerful creatures can vanish, that if the giants of the Ice Age could disappear, so could we. And yet, there is also comfort in these discoveries. They remind us that even after tens of thousands of years, life leaves traces too strong to erase completely. A hair, a tooth, a curl of fur, even the faint scent of ancient grass in a mammoth's stomach. These details make the past alive. They tell us that the earth remembers everything. And sometimes, when it chooses, it lets us remember too. As the ice continues to melt, more creatures will emerge. Each new discovery will bring both amazement and unease. We will stand face to face with animals that vanished long before our civilizations were born, and we will have to ask ourselves not only what to do with them, but what they mean. Are they gifts from the past or warnings for the future? Are they doors to possibility or mirrors showing us our own fragility? What is certain is this: when we look into the eyes of a mammoth calf or stroke the fur of a lion cub that died 30,000 years ago, we feel something that words cannot fully capture. We feel time collapse. We feel awe at the persistence of life. We feel sorrow for what is gone, and fear for what may come. But most of all, we feel connection to a world we never knew, to creatures we never met, and to the truth that everything living is part of one long, unbroken story. The ice may keep its secrets for centuries, but when it releases them, it speaks louder than any book, any lecture, any museum. It shows us life frozen in its most fragile, most breathtaking form. And in that moment, standing before an animal that looks alive, yet is impossibly old, we are reminded of the most haunting truth of all. Extinction is forever, but memory when held in ice can last almost as long as time itself. The ice does not only preserve mammoths, rhinos, and soldiers. It also holds things far smaller, invisible to the naked eye, yet powerful enough to change the course of human history. Beneath frozen ground, locked away for tens of thousands of years, lie ancient viruses and bacteria. They are not fossils or harmless remains. Some of them still carry the spark of life. They wait in silence, in darkness, as the world above them changes, as civilizations rise and fall. They wait for warmth. They wait for release. And now, as the permafrost melts and glaciers retreat, those silent prisoners of ice are beginning to stir. Scientists first realized the truth when samples of ancient permafrost were brought to life in laboratories. In Siberia, researchers uncovered a virus more than 30,000 years old. To their shock, when placed in the right environment, it awoke. It began to infect amoebas, tiny single-celled organisms, proving that it was still alive. After 30 millennia in frozen sleep, it had not forgotten how to function. It was as though time had not touched it at all. This was not a story of bones or fur. This was something more terrifying. Life that should have ended long ago, returning to motion. The idea that viruses and bacteria can survive for so long is almost impossible to grasp. When we think of history, we imagine ruins, broken pottery, or fossilized bones. But these microbes are history's most dangerous survivors. They carry no weight, no shape, no warning until they awaken. A creature like a mammoth looks harmless in its frozen state, but a virus is different. You cannot see it, cannot predict it, cannot stop it once it spreads. And unlike extinct animals, viruses have no eyes or faces to move our hearts. They are pure, silent potential, sometimes for life, but often for death. The emotional weight of this knowledge is heavy. Humanity has always thought of ice as clean, as pure, as untouched. But beneath its glittering surface may lie diseases our bodies have never known. Diseases that our ancestors once fought and lost to. Pathogens that have slept while we built cities, invented medicine, and conquered continents. Imagine the unease of holding a sample of melting permafrost in your hands, knowing It could contain something that has not touched the Earth in 50,000 years. Something no doctor alive has ever studied. Something our immune systems may not recognize at all. We already know the power of disease to shape history. The Black Death wiped out nearly half of Europe's population in the 14th century. Smallpox swept across the Americas, ending civilizations and rewriting the fate of entire peoples. Even in modern times, we have seen how a virus can stop the world in its tracks, closing borders, filling hospitals, and reminding us of how fragile our systems truly are. Now imagine a disease not from history books, but from prehistory. A sickness older than agriculture, older than cities, older even than human language itself. That is what the ice may still be holding. Some scientists warn that the risk is not distant, not theoretical. Already, outbreaks have been linked to thawing permafrost. In Siberia, a wave of anthrax infections spread after unusually hot summers melted frozen soil where reindeer carcasses had been buried decades earlier. The bacteria that caused their deaths had lain dormant, preserved in ice, waiting. When the ground softened, the spores awoke, infecting animals and even people. Children grew sick. Families mourned. The silent prison had opened its gates, and life, dangerous life, walked free once again. The haunting question is, how many more threats lie beneath? The ice has trapped not just the bodies of animals, but everything that lived on and inside them. When a mammoth calf is found, there is also the possibility of ancient microbes in its blood, in its stomach, in its skin. Each discovery that excites us with wonder also carries a shadow of fear. Are we not only awakening beauty, but also danger? Is every melted glacier a door, not just to history, but to hazard? There is a painful irony in this. We are the ones melting the ice. Our factories, our cars, our hunger for growth and speed have filled the air with gases that warm the planet. In return, the planet gives us back reminders of its past. We dreamed of meeting mammoths, and now we do. But in that same dream, we may also be awakening plagues older than humanity itself. It is as though the earth is saying, if you want to uncover my secrets, you must take them all, the wonders and the warnings. And the warnings cut deep. When scientists revive viruses in controlled labs, they work with care, sealing themselves in layers of protection. They know what is at stake. Yet no matter how careful they cannot control what happens as the ice melts naturally across millions of acres of land. They cannot seal the tundra in a laboratory. They cannot contain the Arctic itself. What sleeps in that vast frozen wilderness is beyond the power of any one government, any one scientist, any one nation to control. It belongs to the planet, and when it rises, it will rise for all of us. The emotional reflection that follows is chilling. We like to believe we are strong, that our medicines, our vaccines, our technology make us safe. Yet all it takes is one unknown microbe, one invisible fragment of life from the ancient world, to remind us how fragile we truly are. We live in towers of glass and steel, but our bodies are still as vulnerable as they were in the caves of our ancestors. Our story has always been one of survival, not certainty. And these frozen microbes are proof that nature can rewrite that story at any moment. At the same time, there is awe even in this danger. To think that a virus can survive tens of thousands of years, untouched by fire, flood, or decay, is to glimpse the resilience of life in its most basic form. Life clings even in death. Life waits, hidden, patient. The microbes locked in ice remind us that existence is not fragile only. It is also stubborn, enduring, unwilling to let go. It is both humbling and terrifying to realize that even when empires fall, when mountains crumble, when oceans shift, the smallest forms of life persist. This duality, wonder and fear, is what makes the story of frozen microbes so powerful. They force us to see both sides of life at once. On one side, we marvel at the survival of something so small, so ancient. On the other, we tremble at what might happen if they spread unchecked. In their silence, in their invisibility, they remind us that the world is larger and older than we can ever comprehend. As we move further into a warming century, the question becomes not if, but when. When will the ice reveal something we are not ready for? When will the forgotten sickness return? And when it does, will we be strong enough, wise enough, united enough to face it? Or will we crumble, as so many before us have crumbled, under the weight of disease? These questions hang over us like a shadow, and no one can answer them with certainty. Standing in front of a melting glacier, watching the water rush down from its edges, one cannot help but feel both wonder and dread. The beauty of the blue ice is breathtaking, but hidden within that beauty may be a danger invisible, unstoppable, waiting. It is a reminder that the earth is not just a home, but also a keeper of secrets. And sometimes, those secrets are not meant to be disturbed. In the end, the story of ancient viruses and microbes is not just about science. It is about humility. It is about remembering that no matter how advanced we become, we are still a part of nature, still vulnerable to its smallest forces. The ice teaches us that fragility is not weakness, it is truth. Our existence is delicate, and every breath we take is a gift, never a guarantee. The silent prison of ice does not discriminate. It preserves soldiers, animals, forests, and microbes alike. It holds both the beauty of the past and the dangers we fear most. And as the doors of that prison begin to open, we are faced with a choice. Will we walk forward blindly? Or will we step with care, with respect, with the knowledge that some things once awakened cannot be put back to sleep? What we know for certain is this: the ice is not empty. It is alive with memory. And within its frozen depths, life waits, sometimes as wonder, sometimes as warning. As the world grows warmer and the gates of the frozen prison swing open, we must be ready to face not just the past, but the shadows it still carries into our fragile present. When explorers cut into ancient glaciers, they expect to find ice, stone, or perhaps the body of an animal long extinct. But sometimes the frozen depths give back something stranger, objects that do not belong. Smoothly carved stones where none should be. Fragments of wood in places where no tree has grown for tens of thousands of years. Shapes that look like tools, weapons, or even ornaments, pulled from the heart of a glacier as though hidden there by time itself. Each discovery sparks a question that burns deeper than science. Are these simply accidents of nature or whispers of a civilization we have forgotten? The earth has always kept secrets. We know that oceans once swallowed great cities. We know that deserts were once lush forests, hiding the bones of creatures that no human eye ever saw alive. But ice is different. Ice does not erode quickly like sand or drown ruins like waves. Ice preserves. It holds, unchanging, the memory of what was placed within it. And so, when a glacier gives us something carved or shaped, something that carries the mark of intention, we cannot dismiss it easily. It forces us to look again at our history, to ask if the story we tell about being the first, the only, is as complete as we believe. Some scientists explain these strange objects as natural formations. Stones pressed together under immense weight can split in patterns that seem deliberate. Crystals can grow into shapes that resemble blades or arrowheads. The mind, eager to find meaning, sees design where none exists. This explanation comforts us. It tells us we are still the first, still unique, still alone in our climb through history. Yet the comfort is fragile, because sometimes the objects are too precise, too smooth, too intentional. Sometimes they carry edges too sharp, holes too perfect, arrangements too deliberate to be dismissed as chance. Imagine holding such an object in your hands. It is cold, pulled from the belly of a glacier where it has rested for perhaps tens of thousands of years. Its surface bears no mark of modern machinery, no hint of the factories we know. Instead, it looks like something crafted with care. A pendant? A blade? A tool for some forgotten task? And as you turn it in the light, your heart stirs with questions that no archaeologist can silence. Who made this? Why was it here? How many stories of humanity have been lost to ice and time? The emotional weight of such discoveries is immense. Our history books tell us that civilization began a few thousand years ago, that before this, humans wandered in small bands, simple and unskilled. But what if the truth is more complicated? What if, long before our pyramids, long before our temples, another people walked this earth with their own knowledge, their own culture, their own dreams? If they did, their traces may be locked in the very glaciers now vanishing. With every melt, the possibility rises that we will see a glimpse of what they left behind. And yet, there is also tragedy here. If such civilizations existed, they did not last. The ice swallowed them. The earth turned and erased their memory, leaving us to rebuild from the beginning, unaware that we might not be the first. The glaciers, then, become not just prisons of time, but tombs of memory. They remind us that humanity is fragile, that whole peoples can vanish so completely that only a few frozen relics remain to speak for them. Some explorers believe that the myths of lost worlds, Atlantis, Lemuria, the lands of fire and ice, sung of in ancient tales, may hold a grain of truth. Perhaps they are not pure inventions, but distant memories, whispered down through the ages, of civilizations erased by disaster and preserved in ice. Perhaps when we dig into the glaciers, when we find mysterious artifacts that do not fit the timeline, we are touching those forgotten chapters. Our ancestors may have known more than we think, their voices echoing faintly in the stories we call myth. The debate between science and speculation rages. Rational voices warn against imagination, insisting that extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. And yet, the heart longs to wonder. The heart longs to believe that we are not alone in the corridors of history, that others came before us, walked these same valleys, climbed these same mountains, dreamed under the same stars. To find a carved object in the ice is to feel for a moment that history is not linear but cyclical, that civilizations rise and fall, and we are only the latest turn of the wheel. Emotionally, the idea is both humbling and terrifying. Humbling, because it reminds us we are not as unique as we believe. Terrifying, because it warns us that what happened before could happen again. If forgotten civilizations did exist, if they reached heights we cannot imagine, and yet still fell into silence, then what protects us from the same fate? Are we not also building towers that may crumble, leaving behind only fragments for some future people to find? Perhaps the ice does not only preserve objects, perhaps it preserves warnings. Picture an ancient pendant frozen in crystal, its design still intact, though the hand that wore it has been dust for 10,000 years. Picture a tool, still sharp, lying beside the bones of a person whose name no one remembers. These are not just objects. They are voices, calling across time. They remind us that the earth remembers even when we do not. They remind us that we walk on the shoulders of countless forgotten lives, whether human or something else entirely. The emotional speculation deepens when we ask the most daring question of all. What if humanity is not the first intelligent being to walk this earth? What if the cycle of rise and fall has repeated more than once? What if, beneath the ice, there are artifacts not of humans, but of another kind of mind, another kind of hand? The thought unsettles us because it stretches our imagination to its breaking point. Yet it also fills us with wonder because it suggests that Earth has been a stage for more than one story, more than one act of life reaching for greatness. As glaciers continue to retreat, more and more discoveries emerge. Shoes, weapons, tools, some easily explained, others not so easily dismissed. Each one is like a whisper from the deep past, urging us to listen, to question, to dream. Whether natural or made, whether human or not, they carry meaning because they remind us that our knowledge is incomplete. They remind us that the Earth is not finished telling its story. Standing before these frozen relics, one cannot help but feel small. We walk in the present, but we are surrounded by the ghosts of countless pasts. The glaciers are like libraries, shelves stacked high with books of ice, each containing a page of history. And as the warmth of our world turns those shelves to water, those pages are being released one by one. Some reveal stories we already know. Others show us tales we never imagined. In the end, the discoveries from ice are not simply about artifacts or civilizations. They are about perspective. They teach us that history is fragile, that memory is easily lost, that even the greatest achievements can vanish beneath snow and silence. They challenge us to see our own time not as permanent, but as fleeting. And they invite us to wonder whether we are truly the first, or whether we are only the latest echo in a chorus that has been singing on this earth far longer than we have known. What remains certain is that the ice is not empty. It is alive with memory, filled with relics that blur the line between natural and crafted, myth and fact, known and forgotten. And as each glacier melts, we are given a chance to look, to question, to feel. Perhaps we will never know for sure whether these objects are proof of lost civilizations. But perhaps the deeper truth is not about proof at all. Perhaps it is about humility, about recognizing that we do not know everything, that the earth is older, stranger, and more mysterious than we dare to believe. And in that mystery lies both fear and hope. Fear that we too may one day vanish, leaving only frozen traces for others to find. Hope that no story, however forgotten, is ever truly gone, for the earth holds it patiently in the silence of the ice. When we look at a glacier, it may seem like nothing more than a mountain of frozen water, silent and unmoving. Yet inside that ice lies a voice, a messenger from the past carrying secrets older than human civilization itself. Every layer of snow that fell thousands of years ago was pressed into ice, trapping tiny bubbles of air, pollen, dust, and even volcanic ash. Those bubbles are time capsules. They are whispers from ages when the earth was warmer or colder, when forests spread across lands now barren, when oceans rose and fell. To hold a piece of that ice is to hold history itself, as though the planet has written its diary in frozen pages. Scientists call them ice cores, long cylinders drilled deep into ancient glaciers. Each layer represents a year, just like the rings of a tree. By studying them, we learn what the air was like 50,000 years ago, 100,000, even 800,000 years ago. It is like traveling back in time, hearing Earth tell her story with every trapped bubble of air. And those stories are not just beautiful. They are warnings. They remind us that the climate has always changed, that it has swung between ice ages and warm periods, but never before at the speed we see today. Imagine holding an ice core in your hands. It looks ordinary, clear with faint lines running through it. But then, under a microscope, you see tiny bubbles, air that no living creature has breathed in nearly 1,000,000 years. When scientists release that air, it is as though voices long gone sigh softly back into the world. Those whispers tell us how much carbon dioxide was in the atmosphere, how hot or cold the planet was, how life itself adapted to each shift. To think that we can listen to the breath of ancient Earth is both humbling and heartbreaking, because those whispers also show how fast we are changing her now. There is beauty in the ice, yes, but there is also danger. For centuries, it has kept not only air, but also the balance of our world. Vast glaciers hold enough water to raise oceans by meters if they melt. They reflect sunlight, keeping the planet cool. They store rivers and lakes that feed billions of people. Yet now, under the heat of our age, they are breaking, shrinking, vanishing. And as they disappear, they release more than water. They release memories, creatures, and even diseases long thought gone. They release reminders that the earth is delicate, and that we have pushed her too far. The emotional weight of this realization is heavy, because when we see a glacier collapsing, it is not only ice we are losing. It is history. It is stories trapped for millennia, melting into the sea before we have had the chance to listen. Each drip is a page torn from Earth's diary, dissolved before it can be read. Each lost iceberg is a chapter we will never recover. The ice cores we have are precious because they are all we may ever know of those lost ages. Without them, the silence of forgetting grows deeper. And yet, the ice speaks loudly if we choose to listen. It tells us that in the past, small changes in carbon dioxide were enough to warm the planet and melt vast glaciers. Today, our carbon levels are higher than anything seen in nearly 1,000,000 years. The ice is warning us. The story is repeating, but faster, sharper, more dangerous. The frozen records show us that when the Earth warms, seas rise, storms grow, and life struggles. They remind us that climate is not distant or abstract. It is the breath we take, the food we eat, the homes we live in. To stand at the edge of a glacier is to feel awe and grief together. The sheer wall of ice, towering, glittering, seems eternal. But listen closely, and you hear cracks echoing through the valley, like the groans of something ancient in pain. Watch long enough, and a piece will break, crashing into the ocean with a roar that shakes the ground. In that moment, it feels as though the earth herself is crying out, trying to warn us in the only language she has left, the breaking of her frozen heart. Some people see only water in that collapse, but others see more. They see futures flooding, homes sinking, islands disappearing beneath waves. They see farmers losing their crops, families losing their safety, children losing the stable seasons their parents once knew. The ice is not just melting. It is showing us our own reflection, forcing us to confront the cost of ignoring its voice. And still, there is beauty. The bubbles in ice cores sparkle like stars under a microscope, each one a frozen breath of an ancient sky. The crystals glisten in sunlight, refracting rainbows across the white. Glaciers, in their stillness, hold a purity that makes us fall silent, as though in a cathedral. The contradiction is overwhelming. Something so breathtaking is also something so fragile, so endangered, so capable of bringing both wonder and disaster. Perhaps the greatest emotional truth the ice offers is humility. It reminds us that Earth is larger, older, wiser than us. It has endured ice ages, extinctions, upheavals we cannot imagine. And yet, it also shows us that balance is fragile. Just as civilizations vanish under snow, just as forests turn to deserts, so too can our own time falter if we ignore the signs. The ice is not our enemy. It is our messenger. It is trying to tell us with every crack and every bubble that the choices we make now will decide what kind of story the future will hold. The lesson is simple, yet heavy. The past and the future meet in ice. By studying the frozen records, we glimpse not only what once was, but also what may come. The whispers of ancient air tell us that change is natural, but speed is deadly. They tell us that when the world warms too quickly, life struggles to adapt. They tell us that we are not separate from Earth's story. We are part of it, and our actions are now shaping the next chapter. Standing in front of a melting glacier, a scientist once said it felt like watching a library burn. That is the emotional truth. Each ice core drilled, each bubble studied, is like saving a page from the flames. We may not be able to stop all the loss, but we can listen, we can learn, and we can honor what the ice has preserved. Because once it is gone, the silence will be total, and the chance to hear Earth's oldest voice will vanish with it. The ice is beauty, memory, and warning all at once. It holds the songs of ancient winds, the breath of forgotten skies, the fingerprints of ages we can never visit. It shows us who we were and what we risked becoming. And as it melts, it begs us not to look away. For in its whispers are the lessons that could save us, if only we are willing to hear. For thousands of years, long before modern cities, airplanes, or satellites, there were people who lived side by side with the ice. To the outside world, these frozen lands may seem empty, silent, and unforgiving, but to the people who called them home, they were alive. The ice was not an enemy. It was not just frozen water. It was a guardian, a provider, and a teacher. Indigenous peoples of the Arctic, the Himalayas, the Andes, and other frozen frontiers built entire lives around snow and ice, surviving where others would have perished. Their stories are not only about survival, but also about respect, connection, and deep spiritual ties to the frozen world. Imagine standing on endless white land, where the sun barely rises in winter and barely sets in summer. The cold stings your skin, the wind howls like a living creature, and the ground is frozen hard as stone. For most, it would feel like the edge of the world, a place no human should belong. But to the Inuit of the Arctic, to the Sami of Scandinavia, to the Sherpas of the Himalayas, and to countless others, this was home. They learned the language of snow, reading its textures, listening to its sounds, knowing when it would hold their weight and when it would betray them. Ice was a part of their families, their myths, and their survival. The Inuit, for example, did not see ice as empty space. They saw it as a living partner. They built igloos from blocks of snow, each cut and placed with care, turning frozen walls into warm shelters. These snow houses were more than protection. They were symbols of knowledge passed from generation to generation. Only someone deeply familiar with the qualities of snow could shape it into a safe, strong home. To step inside an igloo and feel warmth was to understand how human beings and ice could work together. It was a quiet miracle born from trust and respect. The Sami people of northern Europe, herders of reindeer, also lived with the rhythms of ice. To them, frozen rivers were not obstacles but pathways. Snow was not only a burden, but a blanket that protected the land through long winters. Their traditional stories often spoke of snow and ice as sacred, as gifts that allowed life to continue in balance. Their survival was not about conquering the frozen world, but about flowing with it, like water moving through cracks in rock. They knew that to fight the ice was to die, but to respect it was to live. Far away in the Himalayas, Sherpa communities lived among glaciers that towered above the world. To them, those glaciers were not just frozen masses, they were deities. Mountains like Everest and Annapurna were holy, and the glaciers that fed from them were sacred rivers of life. Every drop of water that melted from the ice was a blessing, feeding valleys and fields far below. Their traditions taught reverence for these frozen giants, for they believed that angering the spirits of the mountains could bring avalanches or storms. In their prayers, they asked for harmony, not dominance. The emotional bond between people and ice can also be seen in the Andes. For centuries, indigenous groups like the Quechua and Aymara climbed high into the snowy peaks to honor the glaciers. In rituals, they offered coca leaves, chicha, or even llamas as gifts to the Apis, the mountain spirits who lived in ice. They believed the glaciers watched over them, provided water, and balanced the world. To lose a glacier was not only an environmental tragedy. It was like losing a guardian, an ancestor, a piece of their soul. What strikes us most in these traditions is the intimacy. These people did not see ice as distant, cold, or indifferent. They saw it as family. In Inuit stories, the ice has voices, whispering warnings through cracks and creeks. Hunters learned to listen, to know when it was safe to cross or when danger lurked beneath. In Andean myths, glaciers wept when the world was out of balance, their melting a sign of spiritual disharmony. Everywhere, ice was alive, and humans were part of its story. Contrast this with how much of the modern world sees ice today as an obstacle for shipping, as a barrier to resources, or as a victim of warming temperatures. We measure it, drill it, melt it, but we rarely stop to honor it. Indigenous peoples remind us that there was once a time when ice was sacred, when it was loved, and perhaps that is the greatest lesson we can take from them. Not only how to survive with ice, but how to respect it as a living force. The emotional weight of this connection becomes even heavier when we realize what is happening now. The very glaciers and frozen lands that sustained these cultures for thousands of years are disappearing. The Inuit hunters find that the sea ice, once thick and reliable, is now thin and dangerous. Paths that were safe for generations suddenly crack and collapse beneath their feet. Elders say they no longer recognize the patterns of snow. The wisdom passed down is being broken by a world that is changing too fast. It is not only ice that melts, it is tradition, identity, memory. In the Andes, glaciers that once gave water to entire villages are shrinking, leaving communities in drought. Ceremonies that honored the ice now feel like mourning rituals, prayers to ancestors who are slipping away. For the Sherpas, avalanches grow more frequent, climbing routes more dangerous as the glaciers destabilize. They still whisper prayers to the mountains, but they know the spirits are restless. Everywhere, the connection between people and ice is being tested in heartbreaking ways. To listen to an elder speak of these changes is to feel grief on a scale that words can barely hold. Imagine knowing that your grandparents walked safely across certain frozen rivers every year, while you now fear them. Imagine hearing stories of glaciers that were once mighty and eternal, and then watching them vanish in your own lifetime. It is like losing a family member before your eyes, powerless to stop it. This grief is not abstract. It is human, raw, and deeply emotional. Yet alongside grief, there is resilience. Many indigenous communities are fighting to keep their traditions alive, adapting to change while holding on to respect. Inuit hunters now use both old wisdom and modern tools, blending tradition with technology. Sherpas continue to climb, but also advocate for protecting their mountains. Andean villagers reimagine rituals, finding new ways to honor the ice even as it recedes. The bond has not been broken. It is evolving, proving that the human connection to ice is not fragile but enduring. There is something profoundly humbling in this. While much of the world debates numbers, degrees, and policies, these communities live the reality of melting ice every day. They remind us that climate change is not just about science or politics. It is about people. It is about families, stories, and relationships with the land. It is about whether children will know the same snow their ancestors did. Their voices carry the emotional truth that charts and graphs cannot capture. Losing ice is losing part of ourselves. And perhaps that is why their traditions matter more than ever. They teach us how to see ice not as an enemy or a resource, but as a companion. They remind us that survival is not only about strength, but about respect, patience, and listening. They show us that humans can live in harmony with the most extreme places on Earth, if only we see them as sacred. In the end, the human connection to ice is a love story. It is the story of people who learned to build homes from snow, who prayed to glaciers, who crossed frozen oceans, who listened to the whispers of cracking ice as though it were an elder giving advice. It is the story of survival through respect, of tradition shaped by humility. And as we face a future where ice is vanishing, it is also a story of warning. If those who lived closest to ice could treat it as sacred, perhaps we must do the same before it is gone forever. Because when the last glacier melts, it will not only be water that flows away. It will be memory, culture, spirit, and connection. The earth will lose part of its voice, and humanity will lose part of its soul. The earth has a memory. It does not speak in human words, nor does it write in books, but it remembers. Its memories are kept in stone, in soil, in the rings of trees, and most powerfully, in the silent chambers of ice. For thousands, even millions of years, glaciers and ice sheets have been guarding secrets, holding fragments of life, whispers of air, and traces of ancient worlds. They are more than frozen water. They are archives, libraries of time. And as they melt, they are beginning to share what they have held in silence for so long. To look at a block of ancient ice is to look at a page of history. Inside, tiny bubbles of air remain trapped, untouched since the day they were sealed. These bubbles are not empty. They are voices of the past, carrying the breath of ancient forests, the smoke of long-dead volcanoes, the sighs of animals that no longer walk the earth. Every layer of ice is a chapter, pressed down year after year, century after century, telling us what the earth was, how it lived, and how it changed. In this way, the ice remembers not just objects, but entire worlds. Sometimes, when the ice retreats, it returns forgotten faces of history. A hunter, wrapped in fur, preserved for 5,000 years. A wooden tool, carved by hands that shook in the cold of another age. Seeds, bones, or even whole animals, perfectly frozen as if time itself bowed down and chose not to move. These are not just discoveries. They are reminders that life does not vanish completely. The earth holds on, waiting for the moment to reveal what it remembers. Each thawed body or uncovered artifact is a story walking back into the light. And yet, as awe-inspiring as these revelations are, they come with a cost. The reason we are finding them now is not because time has been kind, but because time is breaking open. The ice is melting faster than ever, releasing its treasures, but also unleashing dangers, ancient viruses, buried toxins, rising seas. The earth remembers, yes, but in its remembering, it warns us. The past is not just beauty. It is also a mirror of mistakes, of collapses, of extinctions. To watch the ice melt is to watch the earth open its diary, one last time, before the pages are washed away. There is something deeply emotional in this truth. Ice does not only keep records of climate and artifacts. It keeps memory of silence, of patience, of endurance. For centuries, it stood unshaken, outliving empires, outlasting wars, waiting while humans rose and fell. To stand before a glacier is to feel small, to feel that there are forces beyond our reach, guardians of time that have seen more than we can imagine. But now, those guardians are shrinking, receding, vanishing. And with them, the memory of the earth itself begins to fade. When we lose ice, we lose not only water or land, we lose memory. We lose the connection to stories older than language. We lose the voices of forests long gone, the breath of animals never seen by human eyes, the evidence of how fragile our world has always been. Without ice, history becomes incomplete, broken, like a book with its final chapters torn out. And humanity, rushing forward, may never fully know where it came from, or what warnings the earth tried to whisper. But in this grief, there is also responsibility. We are alive at a moment when the earth is speaking louder than ever. It is giving us messages through floods, storms, and melting glaciers. It is revealing what it remembers, showing us not only what was lost, but what can still be saved. If we ignore these voices, we will inherit silence. If we listen, truly listen, we may still turn the tide. The choice is ours, and it weighs heavier than the thickest block of ancient ice. The emotional question lingers. What will the earth remember of us? Will it remember us as guardians, who learned too late, but still tried to protect what was left? Or will it remember us as destroyers, who knew the ice was melting and still chose to look away? Every action we take, every forest we cut, every drop of fuel we burn, every glacier we watch collapse, becomes part of the memory the earth will keep. And one day long after us, that memory will speak whether in ice and soil or in silence. It is humbling to think that while we try to preserve history in books, museums, and monuments, the earth itself has been preserving history all along. And unlike us, it does not forget. But we must remember that memories are fragile. When ice melts, the past flows away. And with it, so might our future. To honor the memory of the earth is not only to marvel at its beauty, but to take responsibility for what we are doing to it. Respect must become action, awe must become care, and wonder must become protection. Yet even in warning, there is hope. Because the earth remembers, we have the chance to learn. Because ice holds stories, we have the chance to listen. We are not without power. We are not without choice. If ancient people could build lives in harmony with glaciers and snow, then surely we, with all our knowledge and technology, can find ways to protect the frozen guardians that remain. The earth has not given up on us yet. The ice still speaks. The glaciers still breathe. The frozen memories still shine in the cold light. They are waiting for us to answer. And maybe that is the deepest meaning of all, that the earth remembers not to haunt us, but to guide us. Its memories are gifts, warnings, and lessons. They tell us that life is fragile but resilient, that balance is possible but must be honored, that time is patient but not endless. If we let the ice vanish without action, we lose not only the past, but the wisdom to face the future. If we protect it, even in part, we protect more than water or land. We protect the soul of the earth itself. So let us stand in awe, but not in silence. Let us listen to what the ice is telling us, and let us answer with courage. Because the earth that remembers is still alive, still watching, still offering us a choice. And perhaps, if we honor it now, then one day the earth will remember us not as those who forgot, but as those who finally understood. And in that understanding, there is hope. Hope that memory will not fade, hope that ice will not vanish completely. And hope that humanity will find its place not as conqueror, but as caretaker of the fragile, miraculous, and remembering earth. The journey through the frozen world has shown us more than science, more than history. It has shown us the heart of our planet, a heart that still beats beneath layers of ice, a heart that remembers every story, every struggle, every rise and fall of life. Standing here, at the end of this journey, we are reminded that the ice is not just frozen water. It is the earth's memory, and those memories are slipping away before our eyes. As we watch soldiers preserved in their uniforms, mammoths rising again from the deep freeze, ancient viruses waiting in silence and forgotten, civilizations whispering from beneath the glaciers, we were reminded that our world is fragile and miraculous. All at once, the ice is speaking to us. It is telling us that nothing is permanent, that even the strongest walls of nature can break, and that our choices now will decide whether we are remembered with sorrow or with hope. If this journey touched you, if the voices of the frozen world stirred something inside you, then don't let the story end here. Be part of this mission to keep exploring, to keep questioning, and to keep protecting the only home we have. By subscribing to this channel, you become part of a community that listens to the whispers of Earth and brings its secrets to light before they are lost forever. Together, we can carry these stories forward. Together, we can keep alive the awe, the wonder, and the responsibility that the ice has gifted us. Because one day, when future generations look back, they should not only see glaciers melting, they should see that there were people like you, people like us, who cared enough to remember, to act, and to protect. So let us walk away from this journey, not with despair, but with hope. Hope that the Earth's memories will not be silenced. Hope that together we can keep listening. And hope that one day, when the Earth remembers this moment, it will tell the story of how humanity finally opened its heart. Subscribe now, stay with us, and let's keep uncovering the mysteries of our world before they are gone forever.